So tonight we're going to be talking about food addiction and food cravings. I know this has come up a few times from some of you here in the community, so we figured we would go ahead and make a full-on training about it. There's a lot of really good info in here about the science and ways to manage it. So I'm excited to share all of this with you guys and do a little bit more of a deep dive. So yeah, we are going to go ahead and get started. So first things first, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Megan Ryan and I'm a registered dietitian, and I'm joined by my wonderful husband, Patrick Ryan, who is a personal trainer and fitness industry veteran. Together we have combined experience of 20 plus years in the health and fitness industry, and we are passionate about helping people break the cycle of inconsistency. And we know that the traditional mainstream fitness industry doesn't talk about the deeper nuances of how to stay consistent and all the other things that come along with living a fit and healthy life. So we're really passionate about sharing those insights with you and helping you find a supportive and cultivating a healthy relationship with food, your body, and physical activity. So excited to share this training with you today to help further you along that path. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Patrick?
No, I'm ready to rock if you are.
Right on. So what we ask of you during these trainings is that we encourage each and every one of you to actively participate, ask questions by leaving comments, sharing your experiences throughout the session. Your engagement only enriches the collective experience because we can all learn and draw upon each other's insights, right? So when we're talking about this kind of stuff, it's very easy to feel like this is just a me problem, like nobody else in the world deals with this. But Patrick and I can both attest to that's not the case, right? Many people deal with similar problems, and it's just a matter of talking about them and normalizing these conversations so we can work through them together as a group and you feel supported in doing so. Because it's a lot harder to go about it by yourself than it is in a group setting. So I decided to break up this training into kind of 3 different parts. So the first one is going to go over the question, are you addicted to food, right? That's a very controversial question. Some people say, yes, I am absolutely addicted to food, right? Like, and then there's another camp that's like, no, you can't be addicted to food. So we're going to talk about that with some more nuance and answer that question for you guys. And also just hear your feedback and what you're thinking around that. And then the second part is the role of hyperpalatable foods in the role of food addiction, right? And how that plays a part in all of this. I think we're all familiar with those types of foods, and those are the ones that we typically get hung up on the most. So I thought it was important to highlight those and share just the role that those foods have in this type of situation. And then number 3 is how to hack the system. You'll learn about the system and what goes on internally on a biological level. And thankfully, human physiology is very pliable. So just because we were stuck in one pattern may not be how we move forward. So we're going to teach you how to hack the system and try to get you out of the cycle of food addiction and food cravings.
Absolutely. So before you move forward, Megan, type for everybody here watching live and watching as a replay, type a 1 in the chat below if you've ever found yourself throughout your health and fitness journey dealing with some ridiculous, kind of crazy, feels like it's unmanageable food craving or addiction, right? Type a 1 in the chat if you've ever dealt with a significant food craving or addiction that has made you feel like it's impossible to break, which makes you feel like it's impossible to get to your goals. Type a 1 in the chat, in the comments. For context and sharing some of my background and experience, as many of you probably know, I am a huge fan of sweets, primarily cookies and milk. So this training definitely resonates pretty heavily for me, and we're hopeful that it'll resonate for many of you who have dealt with food cravings, regardless of what kind of food it is. But type of number 1 in the chat below if you experienced any kind of food craving that you felt like was impossible to break. All right, Megan, go for it.
So yeah, we'll dive into part 1. Are you addicted to food? So before we move forward, just to piggyback off of what Patrick just asked you guys, I wanted to ask you who just, type yes in the chat or no in the chat, if you believe that you can be addicted to food. So yes, you can be addicted to food. No, you cannot be addicted to food. Just out of curiosity. I took a poll on my Instagram story and I was kind of shocked by the results, so I thought it would be fun to do it here to see what everybody says.
So while people are putting their thoughts in the chat, Megan, what did the poll end up revealing for you?
Let's get some final numbers here because I also put a I'm not sure option on there. So let's see.
So again, for those hopping in here live and as a replay, type a yes or a no if you believe you can or cannot be addicted to food.
So we have 92% of people who voted in the poll believes yes, you can be addicted to food, and 8% of people said I'm not sure, and 0% of people said no.
Okay, so we've got some in between, but the majority yes.
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move on.
Cool.
All right, so I think to understand food cravings a little bit more, we have to understand what food actually is, right? Because that's very confusing a lot of the time. So food is actually a means of survival, right? Like we have evolved from caveman times, right? From eating food because food is calories and we need fat calories to survive. Without food, we would not survive, right? So food is a means of survival at its basic level, right? Because all food provides calories and we need calories to survive. If we tracking, hopefully we're all tracking with that. Okay. So since food equals survival, right? How many times have you heard someone say, man, I'm so hooked on this oxygen and breathing thing? Or drinking water, it's such a problem for me. I should probably stop. I'm addicted. Probably not, because those are things we need for survival, right? We need to breathe and we need to drink water and we need to eat food. Those are just the basics that we need to survive on a day-to-day. So that's kind of what I want you to see food as its basic level, is that it's a means for survival. So at a rudimentary level, can we be addicted to something that we need for survival, like oxygen or water? No, because we need it, right? But there's some other contributing factors to that, and we'll get into the biology here in a little bit of why we think we can be addicted to food and why that feeling is so strong. Anything you want to add, Patrick? I think you're muted.
Okay, I was trying to use my space bar and it wasn't doing it. No, I think that's a really good way of looking at it. It's as you all know, and being a part of this community, you're here for a reason. It's because there are different conversations needing to be had if we're wanting to establish the kind of consistency we want. And we often, Megan and I, have many conversations with people around their relationship with food, and this training is very much helping us collectively have a conversation about food where I think this thought experiment Megan's doing, as far as do we have these kinds of conversations around oxygen that we need in order to survive our day to day, as well as with drinking water, right? When we use that term, or you could say umbrella term, addicted, I think we all can agree it tends to bring with it a negative connotation, a negative stigma that then in and of itself puts on a completely different lens of focus for us when it comes to how we navigate our relationship with food. But those are the main things that come to mind for me. We can keep going.
No, I like that you talked about how the word addicted can have a negative connotation to it, and how we can think that our relationship to food can be a negative thing, right? If we're overeating and all that kind of stuff. And we'll get to that in a little bit, but I'm glad that you brought that up. So we'll keep moving. All right, so how do hyperpalatable foods play into this, right? Because I think we can all agree that those are the hardest foods that we have our hardest time with is those types of foods, right? So Food cravings in general are specific rather than general. So like you don't have I mean, everybody tell me if I'm wrong here, but I have never heard of someone and never experienced myself. And I think I can speak for Patrick as well. It's like, I've never had a craving, never heard of anyone having a craving of just like a tablespoon of sugar or like a raw potato, right? It is when it is fried and with that little bit of salt, it's that sugar from the carbohydrate in the potato, the little bit of salt and the fat all together that makes something hyper palatable, right? And that is what we're craving. It's not these general food items, right? It's because it's hyper palatable that we crave these foods. And food cravings are the hyper palatable foods are what create that addictive behavior, right? And that addicted feeling overall.
So for context, I think we're on 2 now. Type a 2 in the chat. And again, these conversations are judgment free. That's why we've got this group together. That's why we've got these trainings we're running. Type a 2 in the chat if you have found yourself craving a very hyper palatable food and found yourself not being able to think of anything else but that specific food item. You know, with Megan sharing that information as far as hyper palatable, it definitely made me think of my relationship with fast food. Mainly, I love, for those of you in New Mexico, I love Blake's Lotaburger, right? Like craving the salty, greasy fries, the salty, greasy burger. Like there's added context and elements to those food items than, like Megan mentioned, just like a raw potato. There's multiple layers to the foods that we're craving in this particular case.
Yes. And so that begs the question, why do we feel so out of control with those foods, right? Why is it those foods that make us have those cravings, make us feel like we're addicted, right? Well, our bodies were created for survival, right? If we just peel back all the layers, like, and think about how we evolved as living, breathing human beings, it's to survive. And we're built to be hyper focused on foods that we're eating because that's how we survived. Like if you think back a long, long time ago when we were scavenging and like hunting our own meat, right? Like we had to be hyper focused on what was our next source of food so we would survive. So our bodies still understand that mechanism, right? And we'll go into that in our hormonal response because our hormonal response to food supports this as well. Oh no, why is it not loading?
Bummer.
That has all the hormones on it. That's
Well,
a
might
bummer.
have to, I don't know if you know where to find that photo, you could stop screen sharing and then pull the photo up and then be able to go back and forth between.
Yeah, let me see if I can. Okay, let's see here.
Because it sounds like that photo was kind of important for the presentation.
It's very important, yes. Okay. Sorry for the interruption here, guys.
Thank you for your patience again. We weren't anticipating a photo not actually loading and showing up on the presentation. So Megan's currently working, but I would say this is probably one of the more critical slides of the presentation to help tie everything together for you all. So thanks for hanging out with us. In the meantime, since we're waiting, type in the chat something cool that you experienced over the last day or over the weekend while Megan's getting this going. All right, looks like she's able to get it up.
Yes, I'm just gonna have these side by side. Tell me when
You
you're
might
ready.
have to zoom in, like your screen. That's a little better.
Okay. So this is an intro to our happy hormones. Okay. So we have serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, and endorphins, right? We're gonna focus a little bit on dopamine right now because it warranted its whole slide. So that's where we're gonna start. So dopamine is a find and seek hormone. Okay. And so let's go back to caveman times. When a caveman found a hyperpalatable food, dopamine was released in the brain. It told the caveman to do two things. First was to eat that food so that they could get the nutrients and store the extra calories as fat. The second thing that dopamine told the caveman to do was to remember where they found the food. So hence the find and seek hormone, right? And that's important. So they could be motivated in the future to find that food again, because again, that comes back to survival. That becoming a habit led to the survival of humans at that time, right? And so we still have this mechanism within us, right? Like anytime you experience a food that is hyperpalatable, you get that dopamine release and it is telling you, oh, I felt bad before, I feel good now. And so you're going to find and seek that feeling again. Hopefully that's tracking and making sense so far.
Yeah, if this is tracking, y'all put a thumbs up or smash the thumbs up or heart button just to let us know that this is tracking and making sense for y'all.
So we'll keep this, I think. Okay. So some of the other hormones here, I'll go ahead again. That was the only one. So other important food-related hormones, right? Dopamine, we talked about that one, which is related to wanting food. Cannabinoids are related to liking food, and opioids are related to the value of food and seeking reward based on behaviors. So all of these are important hormonal releases that happen when you're eating all of these hyperpalatable foods, okay? And that's why that feeling of I need this right now is so strong. And when that dopamine releases, sorry, can't talk. It's been a long day. Dopamine hit releases, you're gonna want to do that again. So, and it becomes a habit and it's a loop just on autopilot all the time. But most of the world isn't or doesn't live in food scarcity anymore, right? Like we have evolved, we have plenty of food for the most part. But we have evolved to crave these hyperpalatable foods for survival, but we don't live in a world with food scarcity, and hyperpalatable foods are everywhere still, right? So we easily have access to these hyperpalatable foods, which just continues on the cycle. But the reason you feel addicted to these foods is because these foods give you that positive hormonal response, like we talked about. And since our brains are capable of creating habit loops, i.e., you feel using a brownie to make you feel better, right, after a hard day's work, our brains and our bodies associate that food with that positive hormonal response, aka, I need that food to make me feel better. Is there anything you want to add, Patrick?
I think the main thing that comes to mind for me, as it pertains to how we started this conversation and continue to help provide framing for everybody is type of 3 in the chat below, because I just want to make sure, like, type of 3 in the chat below if you've never heard other fitness professionals have these kinds of conversations when it comes to, we'll just say, your relationship with food and helping you understand your relationship with food. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but type of 3 if you have not. Using myself as an example, most individuals around me were not having this nuanced of a conversation with clients and helping them understand their relationship with food. And the reason I emphasize the I almost fell back. Emphasizing the relational aspect with food ties into helping you understand your feelings around food. And I think we all can agree, in Western society, at least, we do a really good job of laying a heavy amount of stigma around feeling, around the soft skills, around the relational aspect of food, the relational aspect of exercise. So hopefully this training at least helps plant some seeds in helping you understand your own biology and physiology, right? And making sure that you have an understanding of like what you're experiencing and what you're feeling is not inherently a bad thing. It's just helping
Right.
you build a healthier relationship with your own biology and with your own physiology. So that way, when this cycle kicks in, because I want to be very clear, it's going to kick in again. As Megan said, this is part of our DNA. This is part of who we are as human beings. You know what to expect. And it doesn't kick in this immediate kind of like panic response of like going for the food and consuming it immediately in large quantities. And then we've talked about this in previous trainings, having the guilt shame cycle kick in afterwards. And then you're constantly in this state of feeling stuck and frustrated because you're following through with some of these deeper biological and physiological needs, but not knowing why it's happening.
Mhm. And like Patrick said, like the whole point in sharing any of this with you is so you know that you're hardwired to want these types of foods, right? That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. So normalizing that conversation with yourself can be a huge step in breaking this cycle as it is. But we'll go ahead and share some other things with you because just because maybe you're stuck in this habit loop, right, doesn't mean you can't break it and get these happy hormones in other ways. So we'll kind of go into that in a second. So yeah, that leads perfectly into part three, which is hacking your system, right? So we talked about the biological system of that dopamine release and how that is a find and seek hormone, right? And so there we can short circuit that and make new connections, right? Our brains, it's called neuroplasticity, right? So our brains have the capability to learn new habits, break old habits and make new ones, right? It's all about just repetition in that case. So we'll share some ways to do that. So that means finding something that gives you these happy hormones that's not food related, right? I see this all the time in our clients that struggle with emotional eating or feeling like they're addicted to food. It is because food has been the only way that they have ever been taught to seek out those happy hormones, right? Or those happy feelings around food or coping with an emotion. It's the only tool in their tool belt that they've ever had their entire life. But thankfully, hopefully by knowing more of this information and having some more tools in your toolbox, you can work through this over time and start to build new habits for yourself. So yeah, like I said, the goal is to teach your brain when you're stressed, anxious, depressed, lonely, that you can do this activity and you can get a release of happy hormones and it will make you feel better. And once you find something that you like, the trick is to repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, right? Like how many times have you reached for food when you felt any of these negative emotions, right? That is a repeated habit over years, over decades. So creating a new habit is going to require the same amount of repetition. So that's key here. So happiness hormones, right? We talked about some of these in the earlier slide. So with these on how to release them in your body, dopamine is completing a task, doing self-care activities, right? Celebrating little wins. Sometimes it's eating food, right? Just because we're working on finding happiness chemicals in other ways doesn't mean we can't use food sometimes, right? It's when it's our only means of finding happiness or coping with negative emotions that it can be a problem. So oxytocin is the love hormone, like playing with your dog, hugging your family members, right? Holding hands, hugging your family, giving compliments. Serotonin is meditating, sun exposure, also heat, right? Also anything using your hands. So think like knitting, crocheting, doing a puzzle. Let's see, I think I had playing video games. That was another one. Anything, yeah, using your hands. And then endorphins, which is painkiller, right? So laughing, using essential oils, watching a comedy, exercising, all of those are good ways to release endorphins in the body. So some examples of this that you could work on is like when I feel stressed, I'll walk my dog outside and listen to an audiobook. So you're getting exercise, you're getting outside with the heat and with the sunlight, and then you're playing with your dog, right? That's three happiness chemicals in one shot there, right? Another example could be when I'm feeling anxious, I'm going to take a hot bath with essential oils and listen to music, right? So that's heat from the bath, something that smells good, and some doing a self-care activity by listening to my favorite music. Again, three happiness chemicals in one activity. So that's kind of the way that you can play around with this and try to find something that you like. And like I said earlier, repeat, repeat, repeat when you find something that you feel like can take the edge off that's not food. Anything you want to add, Patrick?
No, I think you're hitting all the main points.
Okay. Oh, that was it then. So yeah, overall, the whole idea with this and the main message is that food is not the problem, right? It is the habit loop that our brain gets stuck in, which is a normal thing. We evolved to have that process in our bodies, and it's all about just rerouting it because food doesn't have to be the only source of endorphins in your life, right? So there are many other ways that you can learn to cope with food, and exercise I run clients through all the time. It's like, okay, if you're feeling the need to eat after a stressful day, like what is it that you're needing, right? Because food doesn't solve, you're using a food solution for an emotional problem, right? So it's finding a solution that helps solve the emotional problem. And also you get the added benefit of all these wonderful happiness chemicals. So
Absolutely. Yeah, the key distinction here that I'm continuing to glean, and like Megan has referenced in previous or earlier parts of this conversation, is it's all about adding dimension to the current habit that you already have in place, right? Because if we were to come from a space of saying, oh, eating food as a means of moderating and managing your emotions is inherently bad, that's ultimately going to set you up for failure in the long run when it comes to developing an unhealthy relationship with food, right? So going to this section of dopamine, right? It's still listed as an activity to take part in order to boost or get a little bit of a dopamine hit. I'll use myself as an example. Right now is the spring or excuse me, yes, right now is the spring transitioning into the summer. Historically speaking, the warmer months in the spring and the summer are really, really difficult for me and my anxiety and depression. I've got a lot of historical trauma that I experienced from starting at a very young age that would cause some real physiological discomfort and stress in my body. And when I'm stressed, when I'm anxious, and even when I'm depressed at times, I have had a historical past and habit of overdoing it with sweets, right? And it's not to say that I've needed to cut out sweets entirely. It's a matter of, much like Megan was talking about earlier, how can you add more dimension to the thing that you're currently doing that is your only means of managing your emotions or managing your stress? So continuing to use myself as an example in this particular case, I have more tools to utilize in conjunction with food. So as far as this season is concerned, there are certain weeks that I'm feeling more physiologically stressed, anxious, etc. So what ends up happening is I still will eat some of the foods that I know that will help me, but in much smaller quantities. And I'm able to slow down and enjoy them, as well as what makes that easier to do in establishing a healthier relationship with food is all these other things Megan has had listed, right? Because I'm taking part in other activities that are helping, quote unquote, take the edge off that aren't solely me just overdoing it with food. So that's the main seed we want to plant here with each and every one of you. It's not hitting you over the head and telling you food or the foods that you like are inherently bad. It's acknowledging, okay, the foods are serving a purpose, right? And there's a biological and physiological reason as to why that's taking place. So how can we build more dimension through the lifestyle decisions you're making day to day? All these options on this table are an example. How can we work on integrating those into the mix more and more throughout your days, throughout your weeks, throughout your months, throughout your years, so that way you're not as dependent on food being the sole delivery mechanism for that cascade of euphoria, that cascade of, endorphins, whatever it might be for you. So hopefully that lands and resonates. Just to make sure that this is tracking and this has been helpful so far, y'all, please post in the comments below, like what was your biggest takeaway from today's training? Was this helpful? We want to know, because Megan and I want to make sure that we're creating trainings that are relevant and that are helpful for you. So we'll give it a couple minutes or so. I know there's a delay on the stream here, as we want to make sure that this is relevant. So comment below, let us know what your biggest aha or takeaway was. And then we do have some additional information to share with you all before we close out. I saw that Terry just commented below. She said, will there be a replay available? Yes. So Terry, since we got the streaming stuff figured out, if you're watching this, it means you're watching it on Facebook in the group itself. So as soon as we finish the stream, this video will automatically be saved and then re-uploaded into the group. So you will be able to find it in the feed of the community.
And I also wanted to add something, like a little closing thought is, if you have been someone who has felt like they have been addicted to food or just have really intense cravings, right? And we talked about this relationship, right? I hope that the whole reason we share this is to give you a little bit of freedom from those beliefs, right? Because the sooner we can understand where our biology plays into those feelings, right? We can understand why we are the way we are and why we act the way we act, and hopefully take a little bit of that judgment and yeah, because that's what I glean from a lot of people who have told me that they struggle with that. It's like they judge themselves for it, and there's nothing to worry about or to judge yourself for. There's nothing wrong with you, right? All of these biological processes are normal. They're normal, right? And it's all about just adding more activities to give you that same feeling, rather than feeling bad about having that biological process in the first place.
Absolutely. Cool. All right, so we'll move on to a brief little announcement and a heads up for you all. So using this that diagram that Megan shared as a good reference, a lot of this training and what we're putting together in this community is really rooted in helping you build dimension to your life and help you build resources and help you build a lifestyle that allows you to stay or build, not just build consistency, but stay consistent. So this month we are running our next round of our Unstoppable Progress Challenge. So as you can see here on the presentation, the first day of the challenge is starting next Monday, the 20th, and it runs through Sunday, the 26th. And the intention over the 7 days of this challenge is to help you identify your biggest consistency roadblock, because I'm sure many of you have tried figuring out what's going on with your food or figuring out what's going on with your exercise. Well, a little nugget of wisdom that we share in the challenge that I'll give you now is exercise and nutrition only represent 14% of what's actually needed to help you live a healthy life and stay consistent. So this challenge is a very fun way to help you understand what other 6 dimensions of your deep health exist and how to integrate those in a healthy way to help you build the consistency you want. And by the way, the challenge is only $20. This will be our 3rd time running the challenge. Everybody that's gone through the challenge has really, really enjoyed it. It's helped give them a huge level or huge number of aha moments and helping them understand what's keeping them stuck and how to get them unstuck. So I did post the link to the challenge in the comments thread below, so be sure to give that a link. Like I said, full transparency, the challenge is only $20. Each day we will walk you through really easy to digest lessons and helping you understand what steps you actually need to take, instead of getting what we see a lot of fitness professionals doing and just telling you you need to push harder with exercise and you need to restrict your diet even further. This challenge is not that. So be sure to give the link a look below in the comments section here. Outside of that, Megan, was there anything you wanted to add to the conversation before we close it out?
I don't think so. Yeah, just the challenge has been great so far. Everybody that's done it. If you're in the group, you may have seen others posting about their aha moments and what they have learned. So if that's something that has interested you, would love to have you as part of this challenge and to really learn more about what fitness foundation looks like for you and how to build lasting consistency in your life. So we look forward to having you.
Absolutely. And by all means, if y'all have any questions, comments, concerns, do not hesitate to reach out to Megan and I, or myself via direct message or post in the group itself. We've got your back. We're happy to help in whatever way we can. And if it sounds like it's a good fit for you, we would love to see you in this month's challenge. But otherwise, love one another, take care of one another. Please be grateful for each other. We'll likely be putting something out here in the next week or so to get a sense of what other topics you would like to see Megan and I cover in future trainings. So be on the lookout there. But otherwise, let's make it a kick-ass week. Let's make it a great second half of the month of May. And if you need anything, post in the group and we'll get you taken care of. Ooh.
Well,
Right.
that's it.